Now, in that course section, which I mentioned before, where we added Stripe for handling payments to our online shop, I already introduced you to services and APIs, and I explained what that is and why we might want to use that. So you should definitely go through that section first before you dive into this section here. I just want to highlight one specific aspect on which I didn't focus back then. In the very first course section of this course, in the Getting Started section, I already mentioned that as a web developer, we can build websites, sometimes also called web apps, and that we can also build web services or APIs. And I now again want to emphasize what the exact difference is, because that will become important to understand what we're building in this course section and how it differs from the websites we built thus far in the course. When we build a website, which is essentially what we did throughout this entire course, no matter if we had a front-end only or front-end and back-end, then it's all about ensuring that visitors of our website see some HTML page. It's all about displaying some HTML content in the browsers of our visitors in the end. That's the goal here. And therefore, of course, our responses that are sent back by our servers contain HTML code. No matter if it's hard-coded and a static website or if it's dynamically created and rendered on the server with help of templates. Ultimately, HTML code is returned to the visitors, and it's the browsers of our visitors that will then turn this HTML code into the website that's displayed to our visitors. Now, when we build a web service or a so-called API, and again, I'm using these terms kind of interchangeably here, then it's not all about displaying a page on the screen. Instead, it is about exchanging data and performing certain actions. When we used Stripe, it was not about showing a page on the screen, even though Stripe did give us that checkout page, but Stripe actually did way more behind the scenes. It handled this credit card transaction. It reached out to the credit card provider, for example MasterCard or Visa, so that the charge was made. That all happened behind the scenes, and these were actions provided by Stripe to us. So that's what the Stripe service did. And that's a very common use case for a service. When we would work with the Google Maps service for fetching some maps data, then we would probably get back some data in the JSON format, which we could then use in our own website. So when we deal with web services and APIs, it's not primarily about getting some HTML code that should be displayed on the screen. Instead, it's about exchanging data and what that service does behind the scenes for us. And therefore, when we build our own web service, it will also not be about writing code that renders templates and returns that as a response. Instead, it will be about doing certain things on the server, storing certain pieces of data in the database, for example, and it will then be about sending back data, JSON data, as the response instead of HTML code. And in case you forgot why we might build such services or why we might use such services, well, as a developer, there are plenty of services that we might need to use to build a certain website or service on our own. We can also build a service that builds up on another service so that we can focus on our core business logic and we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. We can also build our own service and earn money with that instead of building a website which might offer content to our users. So there are different business models which are possible as a web developer. And web services are just as important as websites.